You're tuning into the Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal podcast. If you have a story or a guest recommendation that you think others need to hear, email me at wildweirdandsometimesnormal@gmail.com. Let's get this started. Alex and Brett, kick it!
Wild. Wild. Weird. And sometimes wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. And sometimes normal.
On this episode, I'm joined by Brandon Wright from the Tinfoil Tales podcast. Brandon and I discussed the podcast world for a bit and the dilemma of giving a guest a platform to discuss their personal experiences if there's a chance that experience is less supernatural and more a break from their reality. We also cover Brandon's own supernatural experience. Brandon and a former coworker came across a dogman in the middle of the road. Instead of continuing to drive on and wondering what they saw, Brandon turned around and went back for seconds. A fascinating encounter with an unknown creature. Give Brandon's pod a listen, give him a follow, and let him know you heard him on Wild and Weird. Enjoy the show. Are you looking to buy a home in New Jersey, escape the city and move to the suburbs? Finally purchase a vacation home on the lake or down the shore? Maybe you're one of the lucky ones who are retiring and moving out of state. If so, let me help you. Keller Williams and the Real Estate Professional Group have what you need to make your goals come true. Reach out and have a conversation with someone who will put you first. Contact Brian McCoach at 856-321-1212 or email brianmccoach@kw.com. Are you looking for CBD for your pet? My friends at Pure Pet Wellness have what you need. They use the highest quality ingredients. While other companies may use synthetic oils in their CBD, Pure Pet Wellness uses organic ingredients, organically grown hemp, organic coconut oil, organic shea butter, organic beeswax, and that's just to name a few. A family-owned and operated company that also offers fast shipping. Go to purepetwellness.com for all your pet's CBD needs and use the discount code WILD and WEIRD at checkout. That's WILD, A-N-D, WEIRD. Treat your animal right. Go to purepetwellness.com. Welcome to another episode of Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal. I'm your host, Brian, and today my guest is Brandon Wright. He's an author and a podcaster. Welcome, Brandon.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. This is great. You've written a book, and it's actually the same name as your podcast, Tinfoil Tales. Do you want to tell me a little bit about it?
Tinfoil Tales, the book, is actually, I won't say I wrote it. It is basically the transcripts from a few episodes from my podcast. So basically, I just took the transcripts from a few interviews, I edited them into book format, and I was influenced from World War Z, that book that turned into a movie or whatever. Like, I had that book a long time ago. It was one of my favorite books to read, so I kind of formatted it, my book, into the style of how World War Z is. But it's basically just me asking questions and listen to the interview in text form. Like, so anyone wants to read it, they can read it in that way. So I made it into like a book. I didn't do it to try and sell a bunch of copies or anything. I mainly just did it because I thought it'd be cool to have a book. And I think it's sold maybe like 20 something copies. It's nothing spectacular, but it's cool. Like, it's out there.
You did the Amazon self-publishing?
Yeah, I did. I actually released another book back in September that I did write. And that one was called Shadows of Cedarville. It's a fictionalized version of my life, if that makes any sense. Like, it started off with the experience that I had, why I started the podcast, but it's about a guy that has the same experience like I did. He starts a podcast and he starts investigating these weird sightings of creatures or whatever around these woods. And like I said, it just turned into more like a psychological horror story. I don't try and take credit saying like I'm some great author or anything like that. It's like 150 pages. And then I don't know crap about writing. So I don't know how to format things correctly or whatever. So I wrote everything. I used Word, I used Grammarly, and then I put it through those chat programs like Bard from Google and ChatGPT so they could get formatted correctly, make sure that it was all set up correct format. After I had it published and I got it back, I started listening. I had someone do the audio version, and it started sounding very weird because some of the words and stuff was like, I didn't write that. And it basically, the chat GTP or whatever was, it changed like the structure and wording and stuff like that. And like, it made me sound more intelligent, but it also made me sound stupid because it kept repeating things. So I was like, the book's out there now. When someone reads it, they're gonna like, this guy literally said the same thing like 7 or 8 times in this book. I was like, that's stupid thing. So I learned my lesson to not trust AI to edit things for you.
So the chance of the robots taking over has just been delayed a little bit. They still have some glitches to work out.
Yeah, but at least the ones that are out for us to use out here in the real world. What's out there that's not public? I think they're probably a little bit more advanced than what we have the capability of getting to.
I'm pretty sure about that. So we have a couple roads I want to go down just from talking about that. I've written 3 books. I've self-published 2 of them, and I'm not an author. I wrote in grade school and high school, whatever the assignments were, and I enjoyed that. And then my children just asking what my job is. My job is terribly boring. Like I get no personal satisfaction out of it. What kind of led to this podcast and writing these books. I really enjoyed that space of being in there, of like trying to figure out, how to write this, how to do this. You have it and you think you're done, and then you give it to a family member or a friend to read, and they rip it apart, and you get it back like, oh, all right, I have to go back through this and go through it, and self-publish, and might be in the same boat as you, as we're not quite at the Stephen King level of recognition as an author, but those days are to come. But I did enjoy that, and then I let it go for a few years, and I have another story that I do want to write, and it's just been in the back of my head for a while. But it's just that jumping into the freezing cold pool, like you need to stick your toe in, it's freezing out again, but once you get in, it's fine. I'm still just trying to get past that mental hurdle of like, I know once I'm in there, it's okay. I don't know, it's so cold in there. Just don't do it. Just stay out of it.
Like the book that I wrote, I think I have it down here.
That's awesome. You're like a
Like it's
Dogman, or yeah.
yeah. Basically,
Your cover's much better than mine, by the way.
that was all AI. I've embraced the overlords at this point. Like I use them for almost everything because it just makes my life a little bit easier. And I figure when they take over, they're like, "Oh, you're one of our followers." Like, "Yep, don't wipe me out. I'm
You're a
here to
day oneer.
support
You
you."
can come work inside the house. You're like, all right,
Yeah.
thanks.
So, like the logo, that was AI created. That poster behind me, I use that for promoting stuff. Like that was AI created. I figured out a way to embrace, I guess, the AI. And then I had that interview with the AI. So I don't know if anyone else had a podcast episode where they interviewed an AI bot before, but I did. So, like I said, I've done everything I can for when the overlords take over. They'll be like, oh, this one's been out there from the get go. So we need to let him live.
Yeah, I'm still dragging my feet on embracing one. I'm like, oh, I'm too old to do this. I can't do this. And that's just like my crutch that I'm using. And it's like, I just don't really feel like watching a 5-minute YouTube video and telling me how to do all this stuff. And I know it'll make my life easier for podcasting. It'll make editing episodes. It'll make promotion. It will make video clips for Instagram and TikTok. I haven't joined yet, but it'll make all of that so much easier. But yet I sit here and just drag my feet. I'm like, no, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet.
I don't use it for anything like that. Like, I'm terrible at promoting. So my show has grown naturally, and I don't know why. I mean, I haven't done a whole lot of legwork. Like, I might get on my normal Facebook page, only had like 100 and something followers. And then my actual personal profile only had like 300 and something friends, but those are mostly people that I know. So I wasn't trying to add like a bunch of strangers to my personal account because obviously I have kids and family life. I don't want everyone out in the world knowing, looking at my kids and whatever. I try and keep private. So I just recently made a different profile, Brandon Tinfoil Tales. I've got like almost 1,300 friend requests, and I have no explanation as to why because my actual podcast page only has like a couple hundred. So why am I getting all these ads? And I think majority of them aren't even real people. So I've been trying to go through all these friend requests and I'd see if there are ads on there, if they're asking for Cash App money. I see if they're asking for like dietary. So like it's so strange that how many bots have infiltrated social media now. And I understand like they're trying to scam people, but it's strange. Like it seems like it's come out of nowhere. And I don't know why it's because on this new one, because it hasn't happened on my personal one, but I also have that one set at private. So I think that's probably why.
So is your Tinfoil Tales one set up as a business or like at a page?
It's set up as just a personal profile, but I don't have anything set at private. It's pretty much an open profile. So I think
Hmm.
it's because no, I just made it like 3 weeks ago. And like I said, every time I log into it, I have like 30 something friend requests like every couple of hours. I don't understand why. And like I said, I posted something a while back, probably last week, and I was like, 99% of these people have no idea who I am or what my podcast even is. And it blew up. Like it went like a viral thing. There's like multiple, almost like 70 something likes on it, and a bunch of comments. People saying they had no idea who I was, but Facebook was suggesting them. And they thought the name Brandon Tinfoil Tales sounded interesting. So that's why they added me. I was like, okay. I mean, check out my podcast.
That's awesome. I need some bots to take over my page. I have my podcast host, to give me my stats and everything. When I first started, whatever, hey, one listen, whatever it was, but like I was getting some good numbers. And then they sent out an email that they were going to clean up all the bots. And then my numbers went down. My overall listen went down like 400, like my total stats. And that was like I was like, oh my, like you just stole that from me. I don't care if they're real or not. Like they're downloading. Who cares? But gained all that back, I guess, through now it's just natural followers. So seeing how that recovered and, and has continued to grow, I guess it's a little more self-satisfying. I also wasn't against the bots listening.
Yeah. I don't think I have very many bots because I don't know who your hosting service is, but with mine, the analytics are not that great. So I have access to my own Spotify and Apple, so I can see how many followers I actually have. And they're decent amounts. And I don't know if you know what listen notes is, but it's like the global rankings of podcast or whatever. It ranks me in the top 5% of all podcasts, which when I saw that, I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. I didn't realize it was that popular. So I set a goal for myself this year that I want to try and get in within the top 1%. I know that might be pretty high goal, but like it's something to strive to. But like I said,
And it's awesome.
the podcast has just been growing naturally. And now that I made this account, I was like, I'm going to try and start promoting it, because if it grew this way without promoting, I must see what I can do with actually trying to promote it.
Yeah, man. Congratulations on the top 5%. I don't want to diminish your accomplishments at all, and I'm not. But like, so with what I say next, I'm like, goddamn this guy. But so I was just talking to somebody, like the 1% rule the world. The 1% elite
Mm-hmm.
is like holding us down. So when I was talking to these guys, were talking about it, and I was just doing the back of the napkin math, and I was like, well, there's 8 billion people, and at 1%, that's 80 million people. Like we have like 80 million overlords. Like so that
Yeah.
1% is like a huge number. So I don't know how many podcasts around the world, but hey, that's awesome. Like keep it up. So I wasn't saying that your
Mm.
5% isn't great. It was also there's probably a
No.
lot of podcasts, and you're up there. So get to that 1%. We're all trying for that those Joe Rogan money. Get that Spotify deal.
According to what Listen Notes says, there's 3 million, like 3.3 million podcasts that are active. So it's based off of that figure. So I figured it's like
That's like top 15,000, right?
200,000
Is it?
roughly.
Oh, all right. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I should quit
There's
my day
two,
job.
there's 200,000 podcasts out there that I'm apparently ranked around. So when you look at it that way, you're like, well, that kind of sucks. It doesn't seem like you're that big of a deal, but I was like,
You
out of
factor
three.
in, what's up there? They have the all the news channels have a podcast, so people are probably listening to that. They have all the PBS ones that My American Life, This American Life, whatever it is. You start factoring in just the kind of the lane that we're in. Yeah, that's probably a top 50 at least, if not better.
Yeah. Like I said, I honestly, for what I do with my show, when I started this, I never thought much about podcasting. And I've always been involved with bands. Like I'm a death metal vocalist. So that's why I have this microphone. That's why I had this computer and everything. Like I bought everything for recording vocals for my band stuff. So I've had this stuff for like 8 years. And then I won't use what happened, but the thing that happened in 2020 kind of derailed my band stuff. For some reason, I don't know if you've had any issues with it, but if you talk about what happened during 2020, I had videos get taken off Facebook, or not, but off YouTube.
I got a YouTube warning, and I didn't even say anything bad.
I didn't either.
And other ones, I rip it, and it's fine. But one thing
Yep.
I thought was objective view on that incident, and they were not too happy with me.
Yep. I got a warning. I got my Facebook or my YouTube video completely banned. And I think I can only have one more warning before I'm completely kicked off of the platform. But whatever. I'll make a rumble then.
Yeah, I was like medical misinformation.
Yep,
And
that's
the
what
only
mine
thing
was
that
too.
I was talking to this guy, John Kerwin. I don't know if you've spoken to
Yep,
him,
yep.
but yep, nice guy, right? I feel bad for him what happened to his family. And at one, I was like, hey man, can't you just like start with like easy stuff like JFK and like warm your family up to this? Like there's like
Mhm.
real world proven conspiracies. You don't have to like go off the deep end. And then so I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, probably since 2020, a lot of families have split up just on the fact of things that were forced upon us or thought were forced upon you. And there could have been differences of opinions on what to do for yourself, your family, or for your children. So I'm sure a lot of families probably were stressed and broke at some point, having to decide what to do for the future. That was my medical misinformation. That was the only thing I said about the incident.
Mine literally was a guest that was talking about on an iPhone, you have like the iMessage or whatever, where live message or live photo, whatever it's called. Basically, like when you hold it down and you see a little bit of a movement in your picture.
Oh yeah,
He says when he does that, he sees the aliens that are hiding behind the human faces, that they're all wearing like cloaking mask and everything.
love it.
And he sees UFOs in the skies and all sorts of stuff. Like it's some out there stuff. They didn't care about any of that. He said that during that time frame, his mom got sick, even though she had her things that they were telling everyone we need to go get, and she still got sick and then passed away. And that was spreading false information. I was like, it's not false what really happened.
Right. That's somebody's personal story. And like, oh, okay, sure.
But that had nothing to do with the topic. He just randomly was bringing that up, and it got flagged. I was like, whatever. So I had another podcast that I've been doing called Dark Side of the Scene, which is where me and my friend interview other musicians. We started referring to it as the Beast era. So anytime something happened, we just call it the Beast. That's how we got away from getting flagged or whatever, because that is a main topic. Because I know it stopped me from doing bands. I know a lot of other bands couldn't do it. You couldn't get together. There was no venues, and like the dark ages, I guess, for playing music.
Especially if you're doing death metal. So they had like the Instagram lives and like people could put up their Venmos and that kind of just seemed like the singer songwriter or the cover band guy could do
Yeah.
well. But the you in your living room and having people sign in so you could just scream death metal at them, maybe it wasn't the best avenue. So you're like, well, kind of ruined my plans.
The night before lockdown, we played a show in Indianapolis. And then the very next day, or maybe it was the day after, 1 or 2 days afterwards, the whole world got shut down. I was like, well, that was the last time I've ever played. And that was literally 4 years ago, like 2 weeks ago. But no,
Yeah,
and
that
when
that
the dark ages,
hey, it makes sense. The guy with the iPhone with the aliens behind the human faces, were you able to see anything interesting? Did he show you the video or just because it was through a computer screen? And also maybe
and
it
he
was
has a Facebook group.
internal.
So I've been on there and I've seen things. And I don't know how far into like cryptids and stuff if you've ever talked with people, but they always have pictures of quote unquote Bigfoot and Dogman, and they're always blurry and you can't make anything out. You see like a red circle, and I just shake my head. I'm like, it's literally like pareidolia. Like you're seeing faces and making like it's not really what you're thinking it is. And that's kind of how I lean with his stuff too. Like it's going to get blurry. And then when you edit it with colors and changing the patterns, and like you're not bringing out details of aliens, you're bringing out the shape of what people are, but it looks morphed and deformed because it's in movement. It gets pixelated. So I'm also very skeptical, which is strange that I do a podcast like this, but I'm more of a natural skeptic than I am 100% believer. And even though I've had weird stuff happen, I still even question my own stuff. Like it doesn't make sense to me, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't push back on guests when I'm talking to them. I might ask them to clarify or something, or just,
Hmm.
whatever. But I'm like, hey, that's your personal story. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. But this is kind of like an open forum for you to get your piece out.
Yep, that's how I am
I'm
too. I'm not.
skeptical of everything I see online, though. Every
Yep.
time there's a new photo, every time there's anything, I'm like, that's not real. That's not real. That's not true. So talking about that guy with his iPhone thing, this probably had to be 10 years ago, whatever, on Facebook. This guy had a group, maybe it was in some alien group or something, but he would always post pictures of like reflections in rocks or like bottles, and you could see the aliens in
Yep.
there. I always found that fascinating. I didn't put too much stock into it, but like that person seemed like he truly believed it. Maybe that's somebody I'll have to go look up and see what he's up to. But that'd have to be, there's a fine line. Hey, if you had a horrible thing happen to you, especially in, a supernatural realm, like that's hard to talk about. That's hard to get support for. That's hard to talk to your family about, especially if they're like, maybe they're deeply religious or they just don't believe in any of this. Like that's very hard.
There
And
is,
there's also, good.
I said, there is a fine line between what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. And that's why I made my podcast.
There's also, and I like that, and that's what I'm trying to do here too. There's also a fine line between listening to somebody who may need mental help
Mm-hmm.
and who may be relaying an experience they had for you. And at times I struggle as I'm talking to people, or if I'm sitting on an episode or whatever it is, I'm like, who does this benefit by me releasing this? Am I exploiting this individual in any way, like hoping to get more clicks? Am I, whatever it might be? Did you ever talk to Ashton Forbes, the MH370 guy?
I reached out to him, but he never got back to me.
Good guy, completely sober minded, all this stuff. But when I first saw him posting about the video and then reaching out to him, I was concerned with him initially. And then talking to him, he was a very sober minded individual and approached this very fact based. Prior to that, I was like, what am I doing this for? What am I hoping? And like, am I hoping to go viral or whatever it might be by having some guy babble on? But that was not him. So that's not what I'm saying for him. Other people, though, I have talked to him like, what is the goal of this?
I actually just had this conversation with another podcaster a couple days ago. I struggle when I interview people because of what you just said. Sometimes I'm wondering if things are really happening or if there's something underlying and this is what their mind is telling them. But I'm not trying to say that they're crazy because who really knows? But sometimes you feel like people might have underlying mental issues and they've manifested these stories. I'm not here to prove or disprove anyone. I'm literally just here to let people explain their experiences. I don't question their anything because I know what it's like to be questioned. And I feel like when someone seems like they're a little bit off, do you release that episode? And the other podcaster said that he looks at it like this. What if they are, but this is their way of coping with it? Because what if this person goes really out there and starts to harm themselves or other people? So this is their way of helping them. So that's how he dealt with it. I never thought of it like that before, but I guess if you look at it in that sort of context, it's like, okay, like I'm not out here making money left and right to try and off people's bad experiences or whatever. That was never my thing. I didn't even come monetized until a couple months ago. And that was my biggest struggle. And then I've recently talked with other podcasters and they said, when you played music, did you do it for free? And I laughed. I was like, basically, because no one was paying for death metal. But overall, yes, I understand what they're saying. Like you're making music, you're going out there, you're doing all the work, you're doing all this. You're just recouping the money. So if I'm making some money back, I'm basically just recouping what I put into it, the time, the effort, and everything else. So I've come more open to it because for the first little over a year, that's a lot of money you're just forking out just to do something. So
Yeah, sometimes I struggle. Like, should I just go back to golf being a hobby, which is this endless sinkhole of money, or should I stick to podcasting and grinding this out and having whatever come currently and what's to come in the future? So right now, I do golf very poorly on the side, and that's just a small sinkhole of money. And then hopefully, I do podcasting on the side much better, and work some of that stuff out in the end.
no. So far, podcasting has been a lot cheaper than doing band stuff because I have like a $3,000 brand new PA system sitting next to me that still has tags on it that's not being used. My wife's like, I need to sell it. I was like, I'm not going to get what I paid for it because I spent like $3,600 on this stuff. And it's literally just been sitting in the basement since it got shipped here over a couple of years ago because it never got used. So I was like, I'm not spending that much doing the podcast. I already had most of this stuff. So
Yeah, if once you already have now the monthly subscriptions is what gets you, because
yeah.
to start a podcast isn't too bad. You're like, okay, I already have a laptop anyway. I'm using it for life or work or whatever. The mic and everything else in between, few $100s, depending on the quality you're going to get. But I mean, for $500, you can have a really solid setup up and running. And then you start getting into the monthly fees, and you're like, oh man, this is like it's like real estate over here. This is a lot of money going out the door.
Yeah. Let's say
Yeah, and I'm close to adding a blue check mark the Twitter bill to my account. There's a lot of people I want to reach out to, and if you're not, you can't do that. And I
I
don't
don't
like
even,
leaving a message in the comments, like if they post something, like, "Hey man, like huge fan, like reach out to me if you want to do an interview." I'm like, okay, great, like that's a
yeah,
lot going on out there.
I don't even mess with Twitter because I hate social media in general. If it wasn't for podcasting or band stuff at this point, I probably would have gotten rid of it all. And it's strange because it's a necessary evil. We've adapted so far into life to where this is now integrated with us. Like this is what everyone's doing. So if you don't have it, then you are the weirdo because now you don't have a means to communicate with people because no one wants to communicate like what we used to. Like, and I'm just as guilty. Like, if someone calls me on my phone, I'm like, I don't know, why are you calling me? Send me a text message. I don't want to talk. So,
Yeah, if you're not my wife or my kids, I don't see the home phone ringing. I'm like, why would you ever call me? Like, please just text.
yeah. So we don't even have a home phone here. Like, my parents still have one, but we've adapted to just everyone has a cell phone. And I have my own theory on that of why we all have phones. And if you've never been in like a metal band or anything like that, it's hard for people to relate to. But like I can see the rise of cell phones and the rise of social media to the downfall of like playing in local bands because back in the early and mid 2000s, on a Friday or Saturday night here in my little podunk town, we could get 200 to 300 kids at an all age show to watch local bands play. And then it turned into now you're playing for other bands. Like there's no one there. And if you look at the year, it started around 2010, 2011, 2000, it just got worse and worse and worse. What happened then? Smartphones came out, social media came out, like more so, like there used to be MySpace, but you had more access to Facebook and then everything else. Like all these social medias came out. And now the younger generation of kids, like my kids are in school and everything, nobody they know plays music. No one plays an instrument. Like the younger kids don't even care about music anymore. So it's like, am I like one of the last eras of people that were doing music? Is it going to fade out? Because now there's AI out there creating music. Someone sent me something yesterday. There's 100% AI created music of a ska song. It had vocals and everything in it. Like they put in the words for it to say for vocals and it sounded iffy, but it still sounded decent enough to pass as just a crappier band.
And that's in 2024. Give it six
Yeah.
months, give it 3 years.
Yeah. So
There
once it,
is good.
I was like, once it gets more and more use, it adapts and it becomes smarter and it realizes and it gets better over time. And then you're not going to even have bands anymore because literally it's all going to be created by computers.
Yeah, it seems like the generation now, they don't mind any of this stuff. Like, cartoons have lasted longer. Like adults watch cartoons. Like The Simpsons is still running from when I was a young kid, and now it's still up and running. I think Family Guy is still on. All this stuff. South Park is still going and still relevant. And you have people 10 years old watching South Park, and you have people 50 years old watching the same South Park. And it is there used to be like a cutoff. Like, hey, Saturday morning cartoon life is over, and you move on to adult life. And there's nothing. You watch whatever content you want. Like I still watch whatever comes on.
Yeah.
But it seems that people are okay with not the real life thing. So if you're just watching a cartoon for entertainment, why wouldn't you listen to, and you're listening to an audiobook. You're not even reading yourself. You're listening to, a band being created by AI. It doesn't matter to you if it's real or not.
Hmm. That's where I feel like we've, not to make my AI overlords listening mad, but I feel like we've opened up that can of worms now and we can't put it back. Like with AI art generation, like when it first came out a couple of years ago, I was one of the first ones on the list for the Mid Journey, which I ended up paying for that literally because I did the subscription when it was still in the beta form, and then my bank card got hacked. And mysteriously, it came from the same Seattle location as to where Mid Journey is being created from. Someone tried to use my card at an ATM, even though my card's here. They couldn't get money out. So it locked the account. I got all these notifications saying someone's trying to pay for Uber and go to an ATM in Seattle. The only thing from Seattle I could think of is like, well, a month ago I signed up for Midjourney and it was like $30 a month to have 100% access to this new image creating technology that wasn't available to the public yet. So I thought, hey, I'm going to get the jump on stuff. And literally it was like trying to scam me out of money. So I haven't used Midjourney ever since then. So everyone else says, oh, I use Midjourney. I use Midjourney. I was like, I don't trust them. Like I was one of the first suckers that went in there and almost got ripped off. Luckily, my bank shut it down before they took all my money.
Your AI overlords were trying to steal your money so they can create more AI overlords.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's the
But
hard part. So you're on social media. How do you stay up on like the most recent conspiracies that are coming out? How do you follow any of this stuff?
I don't really try and go. It's weird. My podcast's called Tinfoil Tales, but I don't try and look into everything as a conspiracy. I know what the recent events that just happened yesterday with this bridge. The conspiracy world is on fire right now because of how everything played out. And it does seem a little strange. I've watched the videos and you do see a little bit of explosions off to the one side, but a lot of people don't see it how I see it. Because this is my day job is I am a construction project supervisor, basically like a project engineer. So I oversee the construction of bridges. I oversee the construction of highways and roadways and stuff like that. They're like, well, why would a bridge fall like that? Well, if your point of impact is right there, and that is one of the integral parts to hold, if it falls, it's just coming down. Like that's just it. Like the weight, it cannot sustain all of that. Is it a poor design? Yes, but that was 50 something years ago whenever they made it. So it's like, I don't see that as being a conspiracy, but a lot of people do.
Yeah, so there was a video going. So most of the stuff that happens, currently, I try not to comment too much on it. I'll talk about it for
Mhm.
fun like this, but I have a guest on, like, let's break down the Baltimore video and tell me, because everything changes in 48 hours and
Yeah.
72 hours, and you get, so there's a video going around. I did like watching the video of the ship sped up, and you could see it kind of like keep correcting itself. It was going
Yeah.
like at 8 speed, and I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. But there's these explosions on the trussels, you know, at the top, and there might have been one at the bottom. And people are like, oh, look at this, it's dynamite, it's thermite, you're see whatever it is. Okay. Has everybody driven across a bridge? Would you want to drive? What was that, a mile and a half, right? 2 mile bridge?
Mhm.
Would you want to drive over that in the pitch black with just your headlights? Like, dude, there's lights on everything. There's flashing lights telling you what lane is open. Like, where is this power coming from? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, maybe not obviously, but an possible obvious solution is these are just power cables snapping.
Yeah. That's how I
Go
was
out,
seeing it too.
go in your neighborhood when there's a big storm and there's a power line on the ground that's dancing around with sparks coming out. Now
Mhm.
have that snapped in half and the whole thing like going down.
Yeah. You have to have electricity ran through there. And each one of those areas, like each one of those pillars, would most likely have some sort of electrical currents running through there to light that because obviously you have lights across the bridge and you have all sorts of stuff. And maybe that's how they have a main power line ran from one side of the water to the other. And maybe it's tucked underneath the bridge. So when you're snapping that off, you're going to see sparks and explosions. Not to mention there was actually a crew up there, a construction crew. And they was like, oh, there's flashing lights. They had the road closed. That's convenient. They're already trying to stop. No, if you listen to what they said, they had people out working to fix potholes. No one would be out at nighttime doing that. Really? Because trust me, I've done it. Like they go out on night on roads like that because there's less traffic. It's like I
Yeah,
said, I
shutting
don't
down a
see it
lane isn't a big deal because it's not rush hour traffic. Now do that 8 o'clock
exactly.
in the morning and everyone's like, oh my God, it's gonna take me 7 hours to get to work. Like, okay, do it at
Exactly.
midnight when no one's there.
Yeah. So
And those guys make coin because they're working, hazard hours, hazard pay, overnight pay,
you would
COVID
think
pay, whatever
that,
it
but
is.
I'm here to say not always. Maybe Baltimore is a
Debunking me
little,
in real time. I see how this goes.
maybe Baltimore is a little different here than what we do, but I know for a fact that our government agencies do not pay their employees very well to do that type of work. Just, I used to be one, so I know, at least I said for here, speaking from experience from Indiana, they're not the most lucrative jobs to have. They're the most dangerous jobs to have, but they're not the most well-paid jobs that you would think they would be. Unless you're working for the private sector, then there's a lot more money in the private sector.
You need to come over to New Jersey then. There was a study a few years ago, it was something about like how much it costs to to repave a mile of roadway, quarter mile roadway, whatever. And they ranked all the states. And New Jersey was like top three. And it's because everything's union work, everything's going through the
Hmm.
state government, the state contract, everything's this overtime pay, this overnight pay, all this stuff. So yeah, I don't know what Baltimore's is, but you also tend to do the most disruptive work during the least disruptive time.
Yep. The contract that I was in charge of, it's still open right now. We replaced two bridges on 65, which goes up into Chicago. So it basically goes all the way down from Louisville. I think it even goes past there. But that big stretch of 65, we were doing two bridges. We had to leave two lanes of traffic open at all times. So we had to build a second lane just to work into. So the two lanes were never, because you could not disrupt. And anytime we had to do something that would slow down traffic to one lane, it had to be done between specific hours. And they were basically from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So those were your 8 hours of being able to take down a lane to go to one lane. Otherwise, it was against contract regulations to have the traffic slowed down because it's a huge major highway through here.
Yes, people don't factor that into, they just see the video and they want to react. They just see something new and they want to react. I think that's counterproductive. Now, as I'm sitting here reading it, but I won't really go on and talk like, oh my God, did you see it? Like, cause it's just going to come out that it was electricity, that it was electric cables, that it was a crew working on there. And you'll see they actually been on there for the last 3 weeks. Obviously, they're on there the last 3 weeks to plant the explosives that we saw just go off in the video. But like, people, you don't have that. So we were talking about AI. There's this person that's been on Sam Tripoli's podcast, Tinfoil Hat. She goes by Human Vibration. And she's big on, a lot of things are fake. Like she thinks that John Benet Ramsey, it was like one of the first computer generated people and maybe never even existed. And a lot of the pageants that she was in, you can't find another person that was in it. So there's all these 5-year-olds, whatever they were, 6-year-olds in these beauty pageants, but like that was either the first year it ever came out or these other people never went on to do another beauty pageant and they're all AI created. Very interesting and a little bit strange. So Kate Middleton, she was missing, the Princess of Wales, whatever she is.
Yeah.
She was missing, and then they sent out a picture of her, and there was a lot of AI corrections in it, and then there was a video of her walking with William out of a downtown little shopping center, which one I just found amazing. These two most famous people in the UK, and the second line to the throne isn't surrounded by bodyguards at all, and there's other people walking by them, and no one like bothers to say like to hound them at all. I maybe didn't get by that. I don't know, whatever, that's fine. So then Kate Middleton released a video. It was like her proof of life video, and she's dealing with cancer, and she had some cancer treatments and things like that. And everybody was like sad and like, oh, I can't believe I picked on her, that they're hiding her, or the lizard people ate her, or whatever it might be. And Human Vibration broke down the video. Like her one eyebrow is like completely crazy, like this angle that doesn't even exist in eyebrows. Not even like in the 90s when the girls plucked them all off and had to draw them in. Like that's just insane thing going on. And you can see like her lips don't move the right way. So, speculation that video is not even real. Is she even real? We live in a weird world, man. The more technology comes, you're gonna need watermarks. You're gonna need individual watermarks to prove that, Brian's talking to Brandon right now. How do we know this isn't AI generated in the future? Like it's a slippery slope we're on.
I interviewed someone last year and I made a joke because if you talk with John Kerwin, did he mention anything about flat Earth?
He was full in on everything.
We went into flat Earth on my episode. I actually just talked to him last week, and I've had other flat Earth episodes, and I've been in these flat Earth groups, and it cracks me up a little bit because they say Australia doesn't exist. I was like, how does Australia not exist? I had an interview with someone, a couple people actually, from Australia. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to make my own conspiracy now. If you don't really exist and you're just AI, it's like, are you really just AI, or are you one of those giant spiders they have running around down here talking to us? Is that what it is? The spiders have taken over. But then there's people that say birds aren't real. I have chickens out back that we've had since they were little chicks. They've grown up. They lay eggs. We eat those eggs. So if I'm not really eating real bird eggs, and I don't know what I'm eating AI generated food. Well, if you start going down that path, maybe we're all just AI and we're all just part of some simulation. Like, where does it stop?
We're in the Matrix, man.
Yeah. So
the flat Earth I find interesting because there are interesting points to be brought up. Like NASA, hey, you're on the ISS shuttle. Zoom in, have everybody go outside. Like we are the world. Like I feel like in third grade we held hands like and tried like creating this line of chain that like connected the world, or there was a thing like that. Have people hold up signs, like they do at baseball games and they get on the TV. Oh, Bryce Harper's my favorite player, and there you're on TV. Hold up like NASA #1 fan. Zoom in on the people, on the person. Do it from the moon. The Earth is 4 times larger. Zoom in, but instead you have all these stupid pictures that aren't real. You have the space shuttle. They lost the technology to go to the moon. They just found it again, went back. The space lander collapsed on itself as soon as it landed. All this stupid stuff. You can focus on real things that make flat Earth interesting, at least a topic. But then you get into Australia's not real. Australia's not real. Well, how about the people who live in Australia or people who vacation in Australia? Or wasn't there just an Olympics in Australia within the last 10 years or something? Like, where did those people go?
Yeah. So there has to be flat earthers from Australia. So what do they believe they don't exist?
They
Like,
don't even exist. Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
The people that
you
believe
can,
the earth is flat in Australia believe that they don't even exist. Like that doesn't add up. And I'm not saying that every flat earther believes that. And I 100% agree there's a lot more questions when you go down that rabbit hole because I was never a flat earther. And I'm still not necessarily a flat earther, but I don't believe everything when it comes to what NASA says. I don't believe we went to the moon. I don't believe in a lot of the stuff they don't believe that we were just in a snow globe either. Like, am
people
I
are very
wrong?
certain and definitive about things that you cannot be certain and definitive about. And it
Yeah.
makes that conversation, then it's easy to dismiss it or easy to mock that. Like, what are you, a flat earth? You don't believe Australia's real? Like, I'm sorry that 2% of the population of the flat earth population believes that.
No. So like I
I'm
said,
in the question everything population.
I question I question everything, especially when it comes to the mainstream narrative, because I feel like that's not always pushed out to be the benefit of everyone besides the people that are controlling that narrative. And I 100% agree that we shouldn't know every single thing that goes on in the world. Like, but at the same time, what is the big secret about? Like when it comes to flat earth, what's the big secret about? And everyone goes back to religion with it. And I'm not a religious person, but they claim that it proves that God exists. Does it though? Like, if you look around, I can say God exists because if you even want to go with a science route, oh, gas has made the universe. Well, what made the gas? Well, there's no answer for that. Well, what created God? Well, you're never going to know. Like I said, it's all just guesswork at this point. But saying that we live on a flat Earth because God created it, no different than saying we live in a universe that God created. You know what I mean? Like that's why I don't buy into that whole aspect to it.
I would almost think that if we proved we lived on a domed Earth, we lived in the snow globe, that would almost prove more like simulation theory.
Yeah,
Like
it
you
would.
can't leave because you're stuck in here by the computer programmer,
Yeah, like this is
who I
the
guess is
snow.
also our God because he created us. I don't know.
Yeah. I've said that too. I was like, so would God be the ultimate creator? They say he's the creator. I was like, yeah, he's the designer, the programmer. We live in a simulation to where that's the hard pill to swallow for everyone. They don't like to understand that they're an NPC character. We're not. No one. We're just one of those side characters. We're no one fancy, nothing special. We just walk around and think of GTA. We're one of the people to get ran over. Just one of the pedestrians.
I
So
heard a study the other day. There's something like 50% of people don't have an internal monologue.
I've heard that too, which is weird because I'm always hearing myself thinking.
Like I'm thinking, I talk to myself all the time in my head.
Yeah.
I'm planning things out. I'm like, what's happening next? What's going on over here? Like, oh, tree, bird, squirrel. Like half times I'm like a domestic pet. I'm just like looking at things going, oh, car, and don't run after it. But to have, I don't know if that's like bliss and like they're winning the game and I'm the crazy one. I'm not too sure what's happening.
Yeah, I heard that too, and it's very strange to me because if they don't have an inner monologue, how do they think? Like, because when
I
I'm
don't,
thinking,
I don't,
when I think of things, I hear myself, even though I don't sound what I think I sound like. But I visualize things, I see things. So do people not see anything? They don't have that capability. So to me, that sounds like there's something off. And I'm not trying to say anyone listening out there that doesn't hear themselves think there's something wrong with you. But to me, it seems a little like maybe there's something wrong with you.
right. Like I'm hearing what you say. I'm not waiting to jump in on the next thought. Like I'm processing what you say. And then it's like triggering ideas in my head. And I'm hearing those and I'm filtering, which road are we going to go down or none at all or
Hmm.
whatever it might be. And these other people, like, hey, if you're listening to this podcast, if you listen to Brandon's podcast, I need to talk to you. If you have zero inner monologue, I'm fascinated.
No, because I would like to know how do you go about things like you just react? There's no thinking, you just go. Like that doesn't I said, when I heard that, it makes me, I don't want to say I don't believe it, but like, it doesn't sound possible, I guess. I understand some people could have it, but not that many. It just seemed like a ridiculous amount of that they tossed out there. But I don't
It
know.
seems that like maybe pharmaceuticals could dull it. So maybe the I guess I have to like actually look at the study instead of the headline and see what's happening. But if maybe whatever you're taking just dulls your feelings and everything, and you're not thinking, and then as you're answering it, or we're going back to the silent majority that doesn't answer polls the way they the mainstream wants you to, and you're just fucking with everybody's science that they're doing. Big
If
quote
you if
science.
you go into that knowledge, and then this will go off into the woo-woo side here. Let's just say these people don't have an inner monologue. So does that mean they're soulless? Because people say your consciousness is actually your soul, your inner monologue, your voice, that's your soul. And that's the energy that's within you that controls you. And once you die, that's what leaves your body. So if that's the case, are these people soulless? And if that's the case, are they considered real? Like, where do you go from there?
I mean, if they're gingers, they're obviously soulless.
That's what South Park at least taught me.
Right. That's all I learned from it. My sister-in-law is a ginger, and I like to remind her of that all the time. You other gingers, yeah, I appreciate you. You know,
No.
sister-in-law, you know who you are.
But
So
no,
you
like,
mentioned some personal experiences that led you down, the Tinfoil Tales road that you're on. What happened?
well, without going into huge, long detail, basically in 2007, I saw something in the middle of the road one night, and the guy in front of me was a coworker. We'd gotten off work early, and I seen he swerved, went down off in the grass, got back up on the road. I'm like, what is this guy doing? Because I'm following him, so I'm thinking, well, something must have ran out in front of him, or he's drunk ass, or what? I don't know. And there's a big black shape in the middle of the road, and it is walking right in the center, like walking towards me. And I'm a couple hundred feet from it at this point. My headlights are hitting it. And the way it's moving is very unnatural. It almost looked like a person wrapped in a big cloak or a blanket or something. And it was all black. I couldn't see, but it was like leaning forward. And I don't want to say like stumble, but like when it would move, it would kind of almost like twitchy, like glitchy. Like it didn't look natural. I always said it looked like one of those inflatable, wacky tube armament things that you see like flopping in the wind. Like that's how its movements look. But I didn't see any arms and I didn't see a head. I just seen a big black torso and legs. I swerved over and it walks past my window. And I'm trying to look up at this thing. I don't see the top of it. Well, I'm in a Ford Explorer, so I looked online, it's 5.5 feet, 66 inches roughly. So if this thing has almost like a lean to it as it's walking, if I can't see the top of it, it has to be 6.5 to 7 feet tall. And I don't see clothing, I don't see fur. It is just solid black. And it gets behind the vehicle, and I can see where my red taillights are illuminating it. And you can see like where its legs are massive. It took like a step. You can see the ground and the tree line that's between its leg and its other leg as it keeps walking. So I tug off. And my coworker had pulled into this parking lot. So I pulled in next to him. And he rolls down the window. I roll down mine. He's cussing. It's like, did you see that? I was like, I don't know what it was. He said, it didn't have a head. I was like, no, but I didn't see a head either. So I convinced him to follow me back. I wanted to go back and figure out what the hell that was because,
Have you never watched a horror movie? You escaped.
well, yeah, he's like, are you crazy? I was like, at this point, 17 years later, yeah, I'm crazy because it gets even more crazy. We go back and now there is a big black animal laying across the road. And to me, it looks like a dog. Like it's got its back to us, but I can see it's like laid out this way across the road. So you can see like its legs are spread out, really black, puffy fur, and it has like a bushy tail. And as we got up to it, I could see like it was kind of moved a little bit, but it was just laying there. It wasn't there when we just drove by a couple minutes beforehand. So the first thing I'm thinking is, well, clearly this must have been what was walking in the road. And at that point, I must have realized that I'm an idiot because why would that be walking in the road? I don't know. I didn't really think about it. So I'm about 30 feet from it, get out of my vehicle. He rolled down his windows like, what are you doing? I was clearly a dead dog up here because he's directly behind me. So I don't know if he can see everything that I'm seeing. And I start to walk up to this thing and it lifts its head up as I'm about 15 feet from it, and it turns its head backwards and it growls. Its eyes are glowing bright yellow. Now, my headlights are hitting it. His headlights are behind me hitting it. So I've always said that's just the eye shine. It's not something supernatural or whatever, because obviously animals' eyes reflect. But when it growls, I'm like, oh shit, it's not dead. And I just stop. And the growl was so, I don't know how to describe it other than very bassy, like very low, don't come towards me growl. Like, so I stop, and the thing starts to try and stand up and does like a little bit of a stumble. And then it stops and stands directly up. And I don't mean on four legs, I mean on two. At this point, it's staring eye to eye at me. I'm 6'3", and I'm 15 feet from this thing, and it's about my height. I've never seen a dog stand up like that. I've seen dogs do this, like hop around. This thing's shoulders drop down like this. Its arms or legs, whatever you want to call them, were dropped down. It didn't have human hands or anything like that. It literally had everything about it looked like a normal black wolf or a black German shepherd or whatever, that type of shape. People are saying, oh, you saw a bear. I know the difference between a bear and what a dog looks like. Dogs don't have or bears don't have like the pointy dog ears. They also don't have long bushy tails like this had. It wasn't a bear. Everything about it was proportional size for a dog. It was just very tall if it stood up on two legs. But the way the body stood up, it didn't look unnatural for it to stand up on two legs. It looked like it should have walked on two legs. So the first thing I think of, everyone would relate to werewolf. Because why wouldn't someone, this is back in 2007. I wasn't down these rabbit holes or whatever. So I think werewolf. If I think about it today, I'm like, it literally could have been a person in a costume, but why would a person in a costume been out in the middle of the road at night? And if it's a costume, they need to go to Hollywood, because that is the most realistic looking costume that I've ever seen, because it had reflective eyes, it could growl and all that other stuff. So if it was a person and they're out in the middle of nowhere, congratulations, because you've just pulled off the world's best prank. But this thing kind of crouches down after a couple seconds and it goes off to the edge of the road. Where this edge of the road is, there's a deer preserve, and it's only like 2 square miles, but they used to have like an 8-foot fence that wrapped around this whole thing. Once it got out of the headlights, I didn't see if it went under the fence, through the fence, over the fence. I couldn't see it anymore. But when it growled, I could hear my coworker in the back screaming, "Get back in the car, you fucking idiot." So I know he had to at least hear it or see that part. And I don't know. I just felt like I had to watch it for whatever reason. Like I felt like I couldn't move. I was just like trying to understand what is going on. People are like, oh, when you see things like that, you're afraid. You don't know how to think. I never felt afraid. I was just very confused because I've never seen a dog do that before. And I go back to my vehicle. He'd gotten out of his at this point, and we're like trying to figure out what the hell's going on, because we just seen that thing in the road. Now we just seen this. And as we're talking, I look down on the ground, and there is a field mouse standing between us. And it's also on 2 legs, but it's wiping its face. Its head's all wet, its body's all wet, and it's like cleaning itself. So I look at him and I'm like, do you see this? And like I take my foot and I push it. And he just keeps cleaning itself. Like it doesn't even care that I touched it. That's the weirdest part to me, is why would a random mouse be in the middle of the road cleaning itself and not even afraid of 2 humans standing there? Like, I don't know, mice coming up and just be like, oh, what up, guys? And like joining in the conversation. Don't mind me. So at this point, I said, screw this. I'm going home. We turned around. He went his way. I went my way. The next morning, I got up and I drew a picture of this black thing, because I thought, literally, still thinking werewolf. And I go on to this website, like unexplainedmysteries.org or something.com. And they have a forum in there for like cryptids or sightings or whatever. So I posted the photo I drew, and I'm no artist at all, but I drew what looked like what I'd saw. And someone commented, you saw a Michigan Dogman. Like, what in the hell is a Michigan Dogman? Well, supposedly it was like a song from like, I think the 70s or 80s or whatever. But people had different, like Beast of Bray Road. I don't remember if that was actually out at that point or not, but I know since then there's been a lot of other things about dogmen. So I went back to work a couple nights later, and I tried to explain to my coworker what I had discovered. One of the other people that were working with us started laughing hysterically. Like, oh, you ran over a werewolf, making fun. And it pissed him off. So he pulls me aside and says, I need to knock it off. He doesn't want people thinking we're crazy. He's going to deny it. He doesn't want to talk about it. And if you knew who this guy was, you listen to him. Otherwise, I probably had better chance of surviving the werewolf Dogman than I did him, because he's a big brawly guy that likes to punch. So I just kept my mouth closed and we didn't talk about it. A couple months later, he got put on first shift, and a couple months later, he got laid off. I've never seen the guy again. So everyone's like, oh, you ever tried to contact him? Like, no, not really, because he wasn't someone I was like buddies with or anything like that. It's just kind of one of those people. I'm sure I could find him on the internet. You can find everything on the internet these days. But like, that was the end of it. And for 15 years, I mentioned it here to like a family member or a friend or whatever, but no one really ever said anything. I was like, they all probably think I'm crazy. And for some reason, where I work currently, one of the guys that I was on a crew with was talking about how he used to be in the military and he was stationed in Alaska for a little while. And I asked him, you ever see anything strange while you're up there? He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, no Bigfoots? He laughed. He's like, no, nothing like that. And I felt compelled to tell him about what I saw. And we never spoke the rest of the day. I felt like, well, this guy thinks I'm a freaking lunatic now, because I just told him I'd just seen some weird, crazy stuff. And then there's like that awkward silence. And I'm like, oh, great. So I'm running through my mind. I was like, now I'm going to get fired. They think I'm in charge of these jobs. And they're like, I can't trust that guy. He's a lunatic. He's crazy.
This is where no internal monologue would have came in hand. You wouldn't even have thought twice about it.
No. And never heard anything else from anybody about it or whatever. But I felt a little bit better when I talked about it. Now, back in 2020, when the Beast era happened, I started listening to podcasts. I never listened to podcasts before. Never had any interest in them. I always listened to music, whatever. But since I wasn't playing music and I was kind of down in the dumps and depressed about not playing music, I was going to try listening to something else, because I used to have to drive for like an hour and a half one direction to work. So that's 3 hours of driving. So it gives me time to listen to different things. So I came across a couple podcasts. The first one looked up was a conspiracy podcast, because why not? So I was listening to that and I started binging that podcast. And me and my buddy always talked about conspiracy, especially what was going on during that era. I was like, man, we should make a podcast. So I started trying to think of names up. I was like, well, people that are conspiracy theorists, they call them tinfoil hat wearers. And I was like, if we're going to tell them stories, like they're almost like, Tinfoil Tales. I was like, that's my name. That was back in like 2020. Nothing. I never made the podcast. We still talked about crap, whatever. I never did anything. So I just sat around with it. I had the idea in my head and I started listening to other podcasts, and these were like, I typed in Bigfoot, and one of the most predominant podcasts out there for Bigfoot stuff, I started listening to. And one of the episodes that just came out was from a guy who used to be a judge, and he was talking about how when he was younger, he had a Dogman experience. I was like, what? I've never heard anyone else talk about something like this. So I started binging, listening to people talk about their experience. I didn't know that was even a thing out there. So I listened to his podcast. I found someone else. I listened to theirs. There's only like 3 or 4 podcasts that I was actually listening to. And then 2022 comes about. I decided that clearly not going to be able to get band stuff going on anymore. I'm just going to focus my energy to something else. I'm going to try this podcast. So summer of 2022, me and my buddy recorded like the first episode. It was all about weather control and some weird stuff like that. And then we didn't do anything else. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I'm just going to start reaching out to people for interviews. So the first person I found was someone that had a Dogman experience. And then the next person was like a Bigfoot thing. And then it's escalated since then. And I originally started it because I wanted to talk about conspiracies and everything else. But I feel like when you're interviewing people with paranormal, alien, abductions, UFOs, cryptids, it all falls under that tinfoil hat thing of you're being crazy, because the stereotype is these people are crazy. They're not really seeing stuff. So I've gotten some flack from people about the name saying I'm making fun of people. It's not making fun of anyone. It's literally embracing the stereotype. Like you're owning that. So it's like, I'm not saying you're crazy. The world might say you're crazy, but I'm not. I'm not here to prove or disprove anyone. I just want you to have the opportunity to talk about what happened because I felt like I couldn't talk about what happened to me. So I don't want people to feel like I did. So it's therapeutic for me to hear other people because it relates to me in a sense to where I don't feel like I'm crazy. So that's my selfish reason for starting the podcast, I guess.
That's a great story. And from what I've heard about other people experiencing Dogman, it seems like you were very lucky that it wasn't aggressive. Seems to be one of the more aggressive cryptids out there.
I don't even know if Dogman exists. And that's where I come at it from this from a standpoint is it's weird for me because I saw something, but I'm so skeptical about things that I don't even know if because it doesn't have the stereotypical Dogman appearance. It didn't have the aggression. It didn't have the hands or the feet. It didn't have like the humanoid skin showing or whatever. Everything about it was just like a normal dog. So was that Dogman? I don't know. Like, what is a Dogman? Like, there's nothing in our evolutionary line, if you go down that path, of what Dogman should even be, because there's no upright walking canines through history. So what would that have been? And like people said, oh, it was just a bear. Again, I'm not a fucking idiot. Like, I know what a bear looks like. We live in Indiana for starters, and there's not really any bears here in Indiana, but there's also not any upright walking canines in Indiana either. So I don't know.
And I do think that field mouse is very interesting that it didn't run off. Do you ever think about like shapeshifters or anything?
That is one of the things that a lot of people talk about because the first thing was walking in the road. It didn't have a head, it didn't have arms, and it was so much bigger than the dog. For 15 years, I said it was literally a dog playing with a mouse. The mouse was traumatized because the dog was trying to eat it, play with it, stepping on it. That's why it was all wet. Because it was in the middle of the road, someone must have hit the dog before we got there. Its front legs were broken. So when we drove up on it, why it looked all weird and moving is because it was trying to walk on two legs, hopping around on two legs. That makes a hell of a lot of sense to me if you're trying to rationalize it. And that's what I accepted as would have happened. This was just a dog that was hurt playing with a mouse. Until you go back to the fact that when he swerved to miss it and when I swerved and watched walk past me, it was so much bigger than what this dog thing was. So was it a shapeshifter manifesting itself when we first drove up on it? It was trying to take shape. And it came back and took shape into this dog and it was out of energy, so it was laying in the road. And then it turns into a mouse, which I don't know if I believe in anything like that. It doesn't make sense. Someone said we were abducted by aliens, and what happened was just memories they implanted into us to cover up what they did to us. I was like, we didn't have any missing time. And I don't know if I believe in that either. It sounds like Sam the Sandown Clown or something like that story. But there is other hypothesis that someone threw out there that makes me chuckle. They said the first thing was a Bigfoot and just got done beating the shit out of Dogman. And the mouse was just a bystander and was traumatized from watching the battle go down. I was like, I mean, that's creative enough. I want to say that's what happened because that just sounds pretty funny to me. But in all honesty, though, I don't know. And I think that's part of the reason why I do the podcast, because for some reason I feel like I need to get answers to this because it's haunted me for so long. And someone's asked before, like, how did this impact you? I'm like, what are you talking about? It didn't impact me. I went back to work. I kept going about my business, like not traumatized from it. I know people have that, like they had these encounters and they can't talk about it. They're scared. They're trauma. I didn't have that. Like it didn't have any effect on me. Wait a minute. What in the hell am I doing? I'm doing a podcast to talk about people that have experiences like this. So it had some sort of impact. I just didn't think about it. I never made that connection until someone brought it up and I actually thought about it with that inner monologue that I apparently have that some people don't. That clearly it had some sort of an impact because there's probably not a day that goes by that I don't wonder like, man, I want to see that thing again because if it walks out in front of me, I'm running that motherfucker over this time. I'm not stopping. I'm getting a body. I'm getting proof. I'm going to know exactly what happened. And I say that people are like, you wouldn't really do that, would you? Yes, I would. So if you don't like me for the fact that I would run this thing over just to know for my own certainty, I'm sorry. Don't listen to me. But that is my belief pattern of no one's going to believe you unless you can provide a body. And if this thing is flesh and blood, what's the saying from Predator? If it bleeds, we can kill it.
That's right.
So I guess
So
that's
if you
my,
were the only person that ever talked about Dogman, I'd be like, man, you can't run that over. Like that's one of a kind. But there are multiple stories. So you could kill one Dogman to prove to the world. There's not just one Bigfoot story that everybody sees it, wherever, New Jersey or India. Not there's not one place. They see it all over. Just kill one and then make all of us people who are interested, you can just prove it to us.
yeah. Now,
The alien implant, I'm going to jump in with my complete non-expert opinion. I feel like if you're abducted by aliens and they're able to implant a memory into you, they would just plant something more normal. So you wouldn't even go down a path of like, hey, that was really weird. They would just make you hang out in that parking lot longer with your buddy as you were talking between your car. And then you guys would, it's midnight and you look back and it's 2 a.m. and you're like, dude, we were talking for 2 hours. I said like two sentences to you. And you just go on about your day that way. Not like, hey, we just abducted Brandon and his coworker. We're going to take them. We're going to do alien stuff. Then we're going to put them back down in the middle of the road and make this big black blob that growls at them and have a little field. Like, that just seems stupid.
yeah. The field mouse is the creepiest part to me because I actually touched it with my foot, so I know it was real. Like could feel it as I pushed it away. Now, strangely enough, I've talked about this in the last few days because I was asked to be a speaker at a couple of UFO alien abduction meetings. There was one in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there was one here in Peru, which is where I live, which I thought was strange that they're doing a UFO meeting here in my own town. But I was like, okay, I don't know what that's about, but it's like I'm the local town whack job apparently around here, so why am I not included in this? And then I'd said that to my friend, and ironically enough, they asked me if I wanted to be a guest speaker because they listened to the podcast. I was like, oh, okay, sure, why not? So I went and talked, and I've mentioned some stuff about UFO things because we've seen some things around here, and I talked a little bit about like what happened with the episodes, but they always wanted to know about why I do what I do. So when I brought up this Dogman thing, someone else told me, it was just this past weekend, that back in 1986, they were out around this area. We have a reservoir out here that they built a dam back in, I think, the 60s. And they were out around the state park and they had what appeared to be like some black canine wolfish thing stalking them. They didn't really they could see like the shadows and silhouettes, but they didn't get a great look at what was out there. In 1990, I heard this from another podcast. The person actually reached out to me to listen to this. It wasn't the person that was on it, but they heard someone from my town. In 1990, they were camping down on the river, and what they claimed was like a werewolf come running into their camp, tearing shit up. And that was just right on the outskirts of town. They're like, isn't that close to where yours happened to? I was like, well, mine's on the other end of town, but yeah, I mean, it's the same town. And then mine happened in 2007. So that's three different instances of weird black wolf looking things happening around here. And where I live at is very Native American territory. Like the Miami Indians, the reason we're Miami County, I'm pretty sure, is because the tribe that used to be here was the Miami Indians. They still have their own lands out around like the state park and the reservoir and everything. We were just driving out there the other night because after that meeting, someone had told me just within the last month, someone saw something walking in the middle of the road, black shape, didn't see arms or legs. They just seemed like a black torso walking in the road. I was like, wait a minute. Sounds vaguely familiar to what happened to me. They said when her headlights got up to it, it went like this. And when it did this, it had wings and then it just flew off. So it was like a humanoid figure with big wings. I was like, haven't heard that around here before. So I was telling my son about it. He's wanting to go monster hunting. I was like, all right, well, we're going to use you as live bait. It's like, what? I was like, yeah. I was like, we're going to go out to the spot and you're going to go out there and we're going to see what happens. So I found the spot because I knew exactly where they were talking about. Me and my buddy went out that night, took him with us, and I was like, all right, there it is. Get out. He's like, I'm not getting out. I was like, I told you you're going to use you as bait. But we drove around and all we saw were if there is, if cryptids do exist, there is plenty of food for them because I saw more deer that night than I think I ever have. And then we went down the side road and there was a truck stopped and he backed up as two high school aged kids. So I know what they're out doing because I used to do that down those roads too back in the old days. And they tried to turn around and they got stuck. Well, because I work in construction, my truck has flashing construction lights on it. So I turned my lights on and they about shit themselves, I think, for the police. And me and my buddy helped push them out of the ditch. But like, don't worry, guys, we're not here to bust you. Go out and have your fun. Just next time, make sure you don't go off in the ditch. So
You're not always going to be there to save them.
yeah, the next time the lights come on might actually be a cop. So just be aware because here in Indiana, that is very illegal.
They're not friendly with that. So even the other day, they talked about the black shape there. Were like the weather conditions the same? Like, do you remember how it was for you in 2007 versus, last weekend?
It was very clear. I remember like the air. I've always said it's like brisk. Like it was in February, like beginning of February. It was very crisp and you could feel and like smell like the cleanliness of the air. I've always thought that about winter around here. Like you can actually breathe better. And that's what I vaguely remember. Like I didn't smell this animal. Everyone's like, oh, like Bigfoot or whatever. They have these strange smells. I didn't smell anything. Like, and because of the way the air was and how crisp and clear it felt, you would have been able to smell something. I could smell like the fumes from our vehicles. I didn't smell anything strange. It wasn't snowing or anything like that. Everyone's like, well, it's February, there's snow on the ground. I was like, I don't remember there being any snow on the ground either. But like I said, it was like the second Friday of February. I'm pretty sure it was like February 9th, 2007. Someone's like, it really did impact you, didn't it? I was like, why? They're like, you remember the exact date? I was like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it did.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you started the podcast because you were interested in it. And that's a pretty big impact. But also, it's just like a mystery within your life. Like, why wouldn't you remember that date? And especially if you're interested in it and not trying to be traumatized by it or hide from it or anything. Like, that would just kind of click more the more you think about it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it was either, I know it was in February, it was either the 9th or it could have been the week before, but I know it was literally right around the beginning of February. And like I said, it's one of those things to where it's a hard pill to swallow to know that I'll probably actually never know what it was because I've never seen anything like it before. I've never seen anything like it again. I still live in the same general area. Like that happened on one road north and a couple miles to the east. I'm only like 4 or 5 miles from where it happened. I drive down that road all the time. I've never seen anything strange. Like now next to it is like an alpaca farm. I was like, well, that's what it was. It was an alpaca walking in the road. And that's what it wasn't an alpaca. I'm not stupid enough to think it was an alpaca, but I
So
don't
those
know.
hybrid bear alpacas that are wandering around Indiana.
I'm lucky it didn't spit on me, I guess.
Yeah. So do you find it therapeutic talking to other people or hearing their stories or?
I do. Like I said, it helps me not feel so isolated because if you go out and try and talk to the average person about this, and I 100% agree, I don't take everything 100% seriously. So if someone were to come up and tell me what I just told you, and if I wasn't doing what I was doing and they didn't have any connection, anything, if someone come up and told me this, I'd be like, friggin' guy's on drugs or something. Like, oh, that was the other thing. They claim that we were both on drugs and we both were just hallucinating. I was like, that's pretty cool that there's a drug out there that can make you hallucinate the same exact thing with someone else. But I wasn't on drugs. I don't do drugs. And as far as he goes, I have no idea. I don't think he did. He maybe had a couple sips of something, but I don't think that would have impacted me. And you know what I mean? Like, so
If it does, I need to start drinking that because like whatever beer and bourbon I'm drinking does not do that.
yeah. So
Or it takes a lot of it.
I've gotten really drunk before, but I've never seen stuff like that before.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw anything. Seen the room spin. Pretty sure that was really happening though.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I don't. Like I said, when it comes to my show and everything, I'm not here to prove or disprove anyone. So when people come on there and they tell me some out there, like way out there things, I might not always take it 100% serious because I think there's underlying things kind of like what we discussed before, but it's their truth. And I'm not here to tell someone they're wrong. That's not my place. That's not what I'm about. Like, just because it's your truth, though, does not mean it's my truth. I'm not saying this is being vague because I think everyone can relate to this. I'm not saying aliens are coming down, picking you up, taking you in a little ship, probing your butt, sending you back home. Like, if that's what you're telling me's happened, I haven't had that happen yet, so I haven't had a guest say that's what happened.
But
If
it might
someone,
have, then they implanted the Dogman and mouse into you.
yeah,
That's obviously, yeah.
yeah. But if someone were to come on and tell me that, the first thing I'm going to think of is, well, what if this was actually something that can be explained even worse? What if it was Uncle Creepy came in your room one night and your mind cannot deal with that, so you've manifested this story because that is your brain's way of coping with it. So now it's not Uncle Creepy, it's aliens, and they are the ones that did these things to you. Our body, our mind, we have the ability to mask things to cover up for stuff that we can't comprehend, we can't accept. So, with that instance, did my mind manifest this dog? Well, I was not abused or anything like that, and it didn't do anything to me. So I'm not saying I manifested that because why would I? That's and why would the coworker be manifesting it to So to me, that doesn't make any sense. But when other people have these one-on-one encounters or whatever, I'm not saying you didn't see it because I wasn't there. But when people say this is this and this happened, I always look to see, well, maybe there's more of an explanation to it. But I'm not going to tell them that because it's not my place. Because who knows? Maybe an alien did come down and probe you. I don't know. Again, so that's where I'm at with it. It's just kind of like I don't believe everything. I question everything. So even when people tell me things, so I've even told other people, like, you don't have to believe what I say either. Like, I'm fine with that because, again, if a normal person come up told me their story, I'm like, probably wouldn't believe it either. But I know it happened because I saw it, so it's real to me.
Yeah, with the coworker seeing it too. Again, the one-on-one stories, is that them compensating or creating a different reality for themselves that they can actually tolerate. But the coworker, man, that makes the story even better.
Yeah, that is one
So
thing that I've been hassled about here lately is saying story. Apparently, it offends people if you tell them they're telling you a story because it sounds like a lie. So I have to start saying experiences.
feel like what our shows do or what we're trying to do, they're like, oh, you're Tinfoil Tales, so a tale's not real and you're making fun of us.
Yeah,
Like, well, I don't sit here and do all of this for fun. Like I put a lot of effort and I'm putting a lot of work and I'm reaching out to people to set up interviews. If I was just doing this for a gag or just to laugh at you, it would come on a lot more obvious instead of, this long-term, ploy that I'm doing to you to make myself sound sincere and treat these with like the utmost respect possible. And that you're offended that I picked a name that, has alliteration, or
yeah,
that, you're telling me something that I can't prove. Like, okay, that's your experience, fine. But it's also a story you're telling me. Like, oh, hey, tell me that story you told me the other day at work. Like, that's also a real thing. It's words that people use. Stop being offended by words that people use that you understand what it is, but you want to misinterpret so you can be righteous for a minute.
yeah. That's like I said. If I make people mad at this point, I don't care. It's like you can't
Yeah.
please everyone. Like
Right.
some of the
Tinfoil experiences, good name, not the best branding. Tinfoil tail, the T, you know, you're
it
there for
rolls
it.
off. It rolls off the tongue.
It does,
Uh,
yeah.
You, you mentioned Sam Tripoli earlier. I didn't even know he existed, didn't know anything about the guy. And then someone's like, "Oh, you're ripping off Sam's show." I was like, "Who's Sam?" Like, I'm not a podcaster. Like, I didn't know anything about podcasting. I just made up a name, and then like, oh, he has a called Tinfoil Hat. I was like, well, that's not very original either because Tinfoil Hat is literally what everyone is a conspiracy person. Like, yeah, I'm glad he took that name because that is like the main name. I never thought about taking a name like that. Literally, I just thought Tinfoil Tales because I don't know why. And now there's an Australian podcast called Tinfoil Tales.
Sue the shit out of them, man. Australians aren't even real.
Yeah. So I've actually been debating on reaching out to them and ask if they want to come on my show sometime, considering they're using my name. And then just the other day, someone sent me something, Tinfoil Chats. I was like, seriously? So I went petty and I commented on there, like, Tinfoil Chats, eh? And it was from Tinfoil Tales. I was like, I understand I don't own the name Tinfoil, but really, Tinfoil Chats is very close. And the guy literally added me on Facebook like a week prior and then made this new podcast called Tinfoil Chats.
It feels like he went into Microsoft Word and wrote Tinfoil Tales and right clicked on Tales, the synonyms, and was like, chats, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So I just gave you promotion, guy, and like, good luck with your show. But
Yeah. The whole, oh, you stole this from somebody. Like, okay, well, did, and I listen to Tripoli and I like him, but like, did Tripoli invent podcasts? Did like anybody, Adam Curry is like one of the pioneers of podcasting. So everybody from him is just stealing from him.
yeah.
All the sports talk out there, Barstool Sports, are they stealing from Bill Simmons or whoever it might be? Or, like, get over it, people. Like, if you were going through and reaching out to every guest after Sam had it and like you were just copying his show with the exact same, like, okay, I took tinfoil tails. He used tinfoil. Great. I used tinfoil to heat up my pizza in the, in the toaster oven. Get over it.
Yeah. It's funny because lately my Facebook page has been getting tagged for Sam's show. And
That can't hurt. You're like, hey, I didn't do it.
it gets no attention though, because the person that's promoting it is a promoter and it doesn't even get any likes. I actually comment on one is like, I'm not Sam Tripoli's show. No response. But every time Sam releases a new show, it literally tags my Facebook page in it. I was like, whatever. I was like, his tinfoil's different. Mine's one word and his is spaced. Like, it is weird how the English language you can say tinfoil is one word or two words.
There was a street that I grew up on, and on one end of the street, the sign was one word. On the other end of the street, it was broken into two words. And it wasn't a very long street. There was like 12 houses on it. So,
There's a town, you said you lived up by Chicago. LaPorte's up around the lake too. And LaPorte, I've seen on signs, one will have LA, then a space, port, and then one word, LaPorte. So it's like, what is it? Is there a space in it? There's not a space. Like the signs can't even keep it consistent.
they're all over the place. Yeah. I didn't see that when I was living there, but, hey, you start paying per word, per space, and they're like, oh man, it's 50 cents cheaper if I don't have that space in there.
Yeah.
Talking about government contracts too. I mean, this all falls into it.
No. That's as bad as it sounds. I quit working for the government because I felt like a hypocrite because of how I felt about the government. I was like, I can't have these feelings about the government and being a conspiracy person and saying how crooked the government is, and here I am working for them. So I left and I do the same exact job. I'm just in the private sector. So I'm not really a government employee, even though I still get paid from my employer who gets paid from the government. But that's my own weird way of justifying I'm not technically a government employee anymore.
You'll see a lot of people in state government who will retire, or their specialty will be like, like the grants or contracts or whatever. So they understand it fully. Then they can go and whatever agency they were in, go open up. And because they understand, sometimes it's so cumbersome to fill these things out and people just get discouraged. Like, I don't have time to fill out 1,000 pages, but they know how to do it. And then you have this, next thing you know, you have this offshoot because you know the secret back door into it.
Yeah. You're paying the same exact person to do the same exact job. I don't know. That's my own little weird conspiracy when it comes to government work.
Yeah, it's the job security, typically the health benefits that roll into it, and everything else they try to sell you on. And then for the outside, they just don't care. Like, they just sign contracts, and it's like, not my, not their money. That's one of the problems with just government in general, state and local, is if a private company is spending money, they have to, worry about the bottom line. But the state government, for New Jersey, if you go into a deficit, you can't close the fiscal year in a deficit. And so they'll shut the state down until they work things out. But there's always the option to raise taxes, or there's an option to raid some fund that's not supposed to be used for. So it is very interesting and a little devious on how they can get around things like that, while also paying the employees not the going rate in private.
I've always said taxation is theft, but I also understand why they have it, because I see the side of it, how they have to pay for things and justify things. So they're like, well, you're a hypocrite because you get paid from taxes. I was like, okay, well, you're right. I am a hypocrite. So now I'm not working for the government anymore.
Just get up and go. Yeah. I rail against all government in general. I think, just as anybody does, it's like, stop wasting my money and stop being so cumbersome. Before I let you go, getting into a little bit of weird stuff here. Do you have any thoughts on like the UFOs, the UAPs that, Congress at first they're having hearings, they're going, Commander Favors coming out, seeing the Tic Tac UFO, and then the Pentagon's office just released that they'd found nothing alien about it whatsoever, and it's all Earth technology. And so they're trying to go back to this drone thing. Do you think any of the stuff out there is alien? Do you think the government's just, back to lying and they change the name so that makes it harder for people to track down?
What do we consider alien? So
Not made by a human.
if they're saying that the technologies are from Earth, they didn't say they're being made by us or whatever. They're just saying they're from Earth. They're of the Earth. At least that's how I interpreted it. So that's not really them denying that they're not something that they're not aware of. They're just saying they're from the Earth. Well, what if what we consider aliens aren't from space? What if they're from here in general? And that one lady mentioned interdimensional. Well, would that be considered an alien if they're an interdimensional being and these crafts are coming in and out of our existence? Are they're from Earth? They're just from a different plane that we can't see from Earth. So I feel like they kind of said a lot of nothing, to be honest. Like it's almost they're saying they didn't find any existence of extraterrestrials. Well, what if they're not an extraterrestrial? Just means you're not of the Earth. You're from a different. They didn't say they weren't from not made by humans. So I don't know. I feel like the whole disclosure thing in general, I think, was mainly just to appease people. And now they're getting their thumb back into it just because people were questioning things. So they had to give some sort of an answer. And David Grush, I don't know the guy, but my own personal opinion, he was only feeding what he's been fed. It's like I think he actually believes he is a whistleblower, but I think the information he was given is stuff that they wanted to be released. Nothing like earth shattering really came about from him. And then they tried to discredit him. And then what happened from that? Nothing. We went about the next day. The newspaper said, oh, he says there's biologics, whatever that means, traces of biologics on these recovered craft. The next day, news goes about itself talking about politics or whatever. Like it doesn't care. Like they're basically just tossing it all out there to make everyone not care about it. Like it's not important. So we just keep going about the business.
Do you think any of this so what do you call 2020, the dark beast or whatever? Like once they
Mhm.
put like the alien stuff out, do you think that was maybe to try to get people away from talking about the after effects of any of that?
We are in an election year, so I'm already preparing for some weird shit to go on this year. But do you remember in 2020 those metal obelisk or however it's pronounced, those weird metal shapes that were like they found one out in Utah, and they start popping up all around the world. Like they're about 10 to 15 feet tall metal obelisk.
Oh yeah, someone else just had one pop up the other day. But yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Like it's from 20 what the hell is that movie? 2001 Space Odyssey. It shows one of
yeah,
those shows up
yeah.
in that movie. Yep.
They found one out in Utah in 2020. Then they randomly started popping up after that one was made the mainstream news. Like they started popping up around the world. Well, just a couple weeks ago, one popped up in England. I was like, are we back on repeat? is, is this like the precursor? So it's like there's going to be some more stuff going on. We're going to have a summer of disruptions and then crazy election. And I feel like the world's a stage at this point. And we're all suckered into watching it.
Yeah, I do. So that's why I try not to comment too much on like recent events. Like I'm
Yeah.
not a breaking news story. I'm not, I don't really talk geopolitical stuff or anything. I think we should maybe track some money that's getting sent out of this country and just see where it's going. Get a receipt or something. I get a receipt when I leave like Best Buy so I can return it. Like, can we get a receipt of just a little
Yeah.
tracking what's happening? But not doing that. But I do think it's shaping up for a very disruptive rest of the year, leading up to the election again.
You know, I'm not going to mention a whole lot about my beliefs in that whole aspect because it will get your stuff shut down. It's happened before, so I won't bring up anything when it comes to that. But I just don't believe that. I don't really believe we have a choice in the matter. If that makes any sense without going too far out there. I don't think we can. I don't think we can change what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're presented with two choices, but are either one really a choice? And then is it, we always kind of end up at the same goal anyway. Like the tip, that's kind of how it was happening before. It seems to maybe the last 4 to 8 to plus years, maybe, we're taking wider turns into, left, right, whatever it might be. But it used to be that you would just swerve a little bit left or right, depending who was in, but you always kept going straight. So like straight's always the answer, right? That's where people are always, that's where the country always ends up. And, maybe we just kind of turn harder into one way or the other, but we keep ending up in the same place. we get the illusion that it's getting better. We get the illusion that it's getting worse. But half the country thinks, as one half thinks it's getting better, the other half thinks it's getting worse. Like we've just lost the concept of, consensus reality, I think.
I just say it's only there to continue to keep everyone against each other. Like they don't want people united. They want everyone to have your own beliefs, and this person believes differently, so they're wrong. They're the enemy. This disruption, the negative vibrations, they want negativity. And not to end this on some straight up out there, this guy's crazy stuff, but I believe that there are things out there that feed on negativity. They feed on low vibrations, which is your negativity vibrations. And I don't know what they are. Some people say they are aliens, like the reptilians. Some say they're demonic. Some say they're fallen angel, like whatever. I do believe that there is something out there that does not want the world to be in unity. I don't know what they are. I don't know. Maybe they're just humanity, but I don't feel like they want everyone to have the world's greatest life to live. Like for some reason, they thrive on chaos.
You have to, I think chaos is like the prescription for the world. It's like, oh, everyone pay attention to Russia, Ukraine. Like, look how terrible this is. But there's like horrible things happening in Yemen, or pay attention to Israel, Gaza, Palestine.
Mm.
Look how terrible that is. Like, okay, like I agree. Like maybe not the best there, and we should think of a better solution. But you completely ignore Yemen, completely ignore Syria, completely ignore parts of Africa that are just hellish and have never been fixed for a decade. But like you don't focus on that. So it's almost wanting to put people's energy somewhere.
Why?
And now you see, I'm just gonna finish up real quick. So now you see also like New York is giving out gift cards. They're giving out debit cards to people who just wandered in through the border. And I'm saying, hey, whatever you want on the border, that's fine. But it really shows that Gavin Newsom cleaned up California with homeless people because dictator, president, communist Z showed up and he's like, of course you clean your house when guests come over. That's why we cleaned up all the homeless. So you can do this stuff. You just truly choose not to and choose not to give a shit. Like it's really sad.
I was going to say, why is it that I actually lost my train of thought?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I completely forgot what I was going to say. I had a good point
But
with it too. Oh, well.
I'm sorry. I overrode you there.
No, you're good.
When you're hosting next time, you cut me off. That'll be fair.
No, no, you're good.
Yeah. But it does seem like maybe there's chaos and I don't think it's too far out there to say that something feeds on it, either in this world, in another dimension, on another planet, somewhere. Talk about the obelisk. Mars, the one moon on Mars is supposed to have an obelisk. It's a mile long that casts a shadow. There's amazing things out there. Hey, is space real? I don't know. There's amazing things out there that just get overlooked. That the moon rang like a bell for 45 minutes. They crashed a probe into it. Can we talk about that more? No, of course not. Let's talk about money laundering, whatever it is.
I remember I was going to say, why is it that we're sending all this money over, but yet, and I could be mistaken, but I don't think I am. Why have we never fixed the problem with the water system in Flint, Michigan? And that has been a problem for how many years now? Like, we don't even take care of problems here in our own country. People don't have drinking water. Oh, we need to send billions of dollars overseas for weapons and this and that. We need to send billions of dollars to help put in water, drinking water for these other countries that are not as well developed as us. What about your own country that don't have drinking water? And then you don't hear nothing about it. Like, whatever happened to Flint, Michigan? Like, did they ever get their pipes fixed?
No, they're still terrible. They're still leaking lead and the people are forced to drink it.
Yeah. So that's where I come back to is like they claim that we're the greatest country. And I'm not saying we're not. I've never been to another country, so I don't really know how to compare it to. But why are we so concerned with everyone else when they don't even try and take care of what we have here? And that's where I struggle with. It's like, and I know that gets used as a means to cause disruption, cause people like me to question why we do this thing. And then you talk to someone else and they're, well, we have to do this. I mean, do we really have to? Like,
and I think this goes back to causing chaos that you feel that people, I don't know, when the Russia-Ukraine thing started was like February 22, I think.
Yeah.
Was that necessary? We get involved right away? Like, I don't know. I don't know the geopolitics. Our own government doesn't even know the geopolitics, what's happening over there. And it just seems that it's a way to throw money at something an unwinnable something. And like at the same time, rub it in the faces of the people in Flint, Michigan, like, we're not gonna do shit for you. And what are you gonna do about it? You're still gonna vote for the same people. You're like, no one's fixing it for you.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. And I've tried to explain this to people. They're all just the pawn. Like they're the puppet. They're the ones that get the brunt of it. The people that you put as your representatives, the people you put in the Senate, if you believe all of how politics works, they're the ones that write the stuff. They're the ones that push the stuff. They're the ones that do all the stuff. And then for some reason, it's always the man in the White House that gets blamed for it. But who's really pulling the strings? Like, they can come out and promise you the world and give you a bunch of shit in the other hand. Like, has there ever been a president that's lived up to the promises that they've made? I don't think there has been.
The one in the White House right now didn't even campaign on promises. I didn't even do anything to say. So I guess he's living up to it. If you're promised nothing and you get nothing, you got what was promised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't.
I have
I
been
don't.
debating. Good. I'm sorry.
I don't lean left or right. So if anyone listens to me, I'm not political at all. Like I hate all politics. So
I want to burn it down and rebuild back up, and where we keep a lot of money within the country and like help the country. And then once you help the country, we can help other people.
yeah.
That's where I'm at with it. But I am debating. I'm, juggling back and forth. Do I do a political guest sometime in the summer? But like, I want to see what the climate is, not the political climate, 'cause that's always shit. But like the craziness that we're living in at that time, or do like, will I keep it just to be, experiences and authors of people of things I find interesting?
No. So I haven't had anything too political. I do have Patreon that I'm going to be releasing new episodes on there. It's called Crinkled Conspiracies. And it's going to be just strictly for my Patreon. And me and my buddy are just going to go down rabbit holes and probably talk a lot of shit about politics and stuff because I can't release that stuff mainstream wise. But I feel like on my Patreon, maybe make a videos for there. If I get taken off Patreon for that, then whatever. But I feel like that'll be for the interest of wanting to hear why I think the world sucks. That's where you can come find it at.
I think I give my view you can read between the lines what my view is of the current world. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
But all right. I appreciate your time. Where can people find you? You're putting episodes out like 2, 3, 10 times a week, man. You're like triple episodes in some days. What's happening?
Well, for anyone listening, if you're interested, you can find Tinfoil Tales pretty much anywhere you listen to podcast at. There is a website, tinfoiltales.com. You can go there, and there's links on there that'll take you to Apple, Spotify, whatever. It's pretty much anywhere. I have a YouTube channel. I do live streams on the last Thursday of every month. Something I just started called Tinfoil Tales After Dark. I bring on another podcaster, talk a little bit, and then we bring on guests. So it's like an open interview. And because it's live stream, so anyone listening like live can ask questions, or even if they want to hop on, be like, tell me you want to hop on the show, I'll send you the Zoom link or whatever StreamYard link, and we can bring you on the screen and you can talk to us live and share with the listeners. I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. I don't know how many people actually do stuff like that, but I was trying to do something a little outside the box. And I have one coming out, like I said, the last Thursday of every month. So should be having one tomorrow. And then obviously, whenever this airs, won't be tomorrow. But you can find that on YouTube or the Facebook. And then I do have a Patreon, like I just mentioned. It's $1.99 a month. You get all of my episodes ad-free and early. So I have about 15 episodes ahead currently. They're all available on Patreon. And I release an episode every Tuesday or Friday. So episode 76 just came out. I have episode 91 sitting on Patreon. So that says how far ahead I am on episodes. So if anyone wants to check that out, I said it's less than $2 a month. You get no ads. You get early access to the episodes, and I'm going to have exclusive stuff on there. There's live videos on there. Like when I record on Zoom, like how we're doing now, I don't release the videos. I put those on Patreon now. Before I was only doing audio. So now like my YouTube channel is just strictly audio, but the video portion will be on the Patreon. It's just something a little different to try and help out. It's not because I need the money. Like it's less than $2 a month. So it's not like I'm making like buku bucks from it or whatever, but it's one of the cheapest you could go with having to pay the Patreon fee and everything else to it. It's like basically making a buck. So it is what it is.
I'm sitting on all my videos. I release audio only. So in the future, when I end up on Patreon releasing these videos like that, and they're like, "You ripped off Tinfoil Tales," I'm like, "Hey man, he told about it on my podcast. I'm allowed to rip it off then."
Yeah. I'm not a pioneer by any means, but I just do what I do and I keep my head down and I just grind away. And for some reason, the podcast has developed a decent following and I'm grateful for it. I appreciate everyone that has come on the show and shared with me. I appreciate anyone that wants to come on the show. And I appreciate people like you that want me to come on and talk about stuff. So, like I said, I've enjoyed doing it. It's been fun.
Yeah, I love what I do. I appreciate you coming on. I'll put all your stuff in the show notes and everything. I'm definitely going to check out your Tinfoil After Dark. I thought maybe like, a nice like cozy blanket and some like sexy music going on, a glass of wine or something. I was like, oh, what's happening here? But I guess a live recording and letting people chime in is probably a lot better.
Yeah. That's the last
This is
episode.
like P. Diddy stuff over here.
No, we don't do the P. Diddy over there. We might talk about P. Diddy, but
He's fascinating. I need to let this play out a little bit and have somebody on here talking about it.
no,
I need to see what happens first.
it might be brought up in one of my crinkled conspiracy episodes. If anyone wonders, I've never actually publicly mentioned the name, so this will be the first time they've ever heard of crinkled conspiracies.
Breaking news here. That's what we do here. This is important.
Yeah. If
But
anyone wonder what crinkled means, crinkle's like you crinkle tinfoil.
That makes sense. Yeah. I was thinking like crinkle cut, like fries or something. I was like, there you
But no.
go. They're crinkled cut French fries already has a trademark. And here you go, just taking it.
No, we got the C and the C. I had the T and the T, so I had to go C and C.
Yeah. The alliteration, man. That's where it's at. It just rolls off the tongue. It sticks to people's heads better. I appreciate you coming on. I'll put all your stuff in the show notes so people can find you. So thanks a lot.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right, everyone. That was our show. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast. Like and follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date in all things wild and weird. Check out the links in the show notes for more information on our guest. The biggest support you can offer is to tell everyone about the podcast. Until next time,